All right, well, welcome back to King's Outdoor Life, and you can see we're indoors, but we're setting up the saw and my tables here. We're going to build a wheelchair ramp. We do several of these a year for folks from church who, they fall or have surgery and can't get back home and get back in their house. Some are temporary, and unfortunately, most of them become permanent, but we've kind of developed a little system here on doing these. So I'm going to take you through this, and this will probably be, I don't know, maybe 2 videos. We might consolidate it down to 1, just depends on how much footage we have. But I want to just kind of go through how we do this, and it's kind of the system I've got set up. So you can see I've got the miter saw set up. We're going to make all the cuts we can make here in the barn where it's level and controlled environment. And that way, when we get to the house where we're building the ramp, we've got a lot of these simple cuts made, and we spend a lot more time with when I got some guys there to help me just screwing those boards down. So we're going to set up the tables here so we can make all the common cuts here. Another thing I do ahead of time is I go ahead and make the platform or landing. Typically you have a landing at the house, at the door rather, so you can go in the house. And then if you have to come down so far and make a turn, you'll have to have another landing. So I'll go ahead and make those landings. That way, once I get there, the first thing I do at the house, I can set those landings, and then we're just connecting everything to those common points. So I can build those landings here on a flat concrete surface without having to be out in your yard or the mud. You never know where you're going to be building these ramps, what the situation is going to be. So I do it as much as I can ahead of time in my own controlled environment. And then when I get some help on site, we're not wasting a bunch of time cutting boards and developing landings and building these things that I can have done ahead of time. So I'm going to get it all set up where you can watch me how we set these up and make these common cuts, and we'll go. All right, so first thing I do here is I'm laying out these boards to make my cuts. And I got 2 length boards. My wheelchair ramp is the wheelchair ramp is 40 inches wide. So each of these will be cut at 40 inches, and I'll mark them. So I go with a long board and a short board. These that are 40, I use 120 inch boards, a 10-foot board, so I can get 3 40-inch boards out of that 10-foot. Or on a long board, I go to 48, and out of a 16-foot board, I can get 4 48-inch boards out of that 16-foot board. So it just reduces the waste by doing that way. And that way I would mark all these. I'm gonna do my long ones first. I only have a few long boards. The 2 landings are 48 inches squared. So I'll do those 2 first, and I'll mark these at 48 inches, and I'll set those up in 48. Another way you can do it, if you come down to the saw, you can set up a fence. If you come to right here where my hand is here, I could set up a fence at 48. And that way I just butt every board to this fence and make every cut the same. I've learned though, unless you've got a really fixed saw and a really fixed fence, you end up getting off and you don't know it. And you get mindless of moving everything to that fence, and it gets off and you cut a bunch of boards that are off. All right, so I'm marking these at 48, and I'm marking the next one at 96. And then the next one will be a little bit short of my mark. They always give you a little extra on these boards. If it's a 10-foot board, it's gonna be 10.5 inches. This is supposed to be a 12-foot board, and it's actually gonna be 12.5 inches. They give you a little extra, but you do have to cut that off, or when you lay it, you screw it down, it'll be hanging off and you can cut it off then. I like to go ahead and cut it off here while I've got my miter saw set up. It's a lot easier. So then we're gonna move back down here. We got this one set up. I can drag it into place. Come around, make sure I'm hitting everywhere. And that board is cut and ready to go. I'll put that back on the trailer. I got an extra set of hands here tonight, that's great. I'll stack those 48s all in one place, and I'll stack all my 40s all in one place. That way when we get to the job site and we're laying those, we already know we've got a 48 and we got a 40. Okay, so I'll come back in and check, just make sure I didn't lose my mind. Measure twice, cut once, and do that. So I'm gonna set this up, and I won't bore you with watching me cut a whole bunch of these, but this is what it goes. Measure 48, chop it off, set it aside, stack those on the trailer, and we got all those sitting there at one spot 48s, one spot 40s. Notice these right here. I put these here, that way when I chop that, it doesn't fall. It just lands on these. And also when I'm making this shortcut here, when I set this up for the shortcut, it's sitting there and holding itself. I'm not having to try to hold that to cut off a 1/2 inch here. So I've got all those 48s there cut, and I'll start on the board. And by doing this, you know, by doing 48 here like this, and then going 96, you're actually losing
A little bit of.
You know, what's called the curve, the width of the saw blade.
Yeah.
But on something like this, I'm not that
Yeah.
with the curve of the blade. And then I think sometimes I will. All right, so that's got all of these cut up except 2. I always leave one uncut just because, I don't know, it's like good luck or something. And that way if you need an extra long one or something, you've got it. And this one, I don't know, I guess the sawmill got messed up there, but anyway. All right, so on these 2x8s here, we've got regular 4-foot corners, like a 4-foot landing. So we come to the end of the one way to make the turn on the walkway or the wheelchair ramp. We've got a landing. So it's 4 foot by 4 foot. So I'll mark those 2 at 96. But then what I do on the other side is I only make it, and this will make sense better when I lay it out. I make it 40 inches for the walkway plus 3.5 inches for the 4x4. So I mark this one at 43.5. 43.5 times 2 is 87. I marked that at 87. So this box will be, 43.5 by 43.5, and then 48, 48. And we'll make sure we get that square. And again, it'll make more sense once we lay it out on the ground. If you're coming down the ramp, is where your camera is. You're coming down the ramp where you're walking right now. So it's 48 this way, 48 this way. It's going to turn and make a 90-degree turn here. And that one's only going to be 40 inches. And this one is only going to be 40 inches. So then what we have here is we'll make a 45 across there to accommodate for those. So if you remember here, this was 43.5 because you got a 40-inch walkway to here. And then our 3.5-inch 4x4 will sit here. I 45'd this just to connect these two. And then I built this square box. Now you want to make sure it's square. I use a speed square to put in these corners to make sure they're square, and I do that with all the corners. But you can also do the Pythagorean theorem if you really want to check yourself. So I do 3 inches here, 4 inches this way, and if I measure between here and here, that should equal 5, which it does, and I've done both those corners. We'll nail it in place, and you can nail 3 in place and get to that last one, and then that's when you really need to make sure you got it square before you make those last nails. All right. So now we need to run our stringers. And just to add, basically like floor joist here, we'll run them this way or we can run them this way. These runners will be coming through here. These will be going to run in that way. So either way, they're going to be running a different way. It's really just a personal choice. I like to keep them going the long run. We're going to be coming 14 feet this way. We'll just keep going on that same run before we turn them here. So we'll run stringers here. We got a 48 inch here. So we'll do 16 inches on center and run those right through here like this. I'm going to come 16 from the outside and put my stringer here, 32, put it here. So I know this is where I am. I like to go ahead and get it square. So I'll take my speed square it this way, and then also square it this way. That way when we go to run these in here, we can see which way square up and down as well. So come here, square it that way. Come here, square it that way. And we're good to go. I'll do the same thing off this side. So we got 16, 32. There you go there. They're vertical. So now I got to take this measurement, which should be your 48 less your 1.5, so it's 46.5 and 46.5. So I've just thought of something, and this way, no matter how many of these you build, you kind of think of something that way. I've already cut my 48s. So that 48 is going to have to come from here across here. So this one is where I'm going to be a little short. I should have moved this inside on both sides in order for that 48 to reach. That's why I keep those 2 extra boards. Make sure I've got I can cut those to 50, and those I got to cut at 48 will work on the other. Grab that front camera. Keep it rolling. All right, so what we've done here is we've laid this out. We've got 43, 21.5 in the center. We've got these leveled up, so we know that this and this are going to go here. Again, this is just to brace all this up. So when this all gets put together, we'll make sure this is all square. And again, these will be sitting on the brick, but I don't want any lateral movement, so I put these in here, and then we'll have vertical posts holding everything to the floor too. So we get this measurement here. So I'm going to put this one at this right here. I guess that's just about right, didn't I? There, there, and there. All right, and again, I'm going to put my square on here. Make it square this way as well. Here, get my square here, and I'm gonna have a runner on both sides. So I'm gonna go here, drop it on this side, and I'm gonna go here. And that way I know I'm getting these square all the way across. There, there, and there. And then we will nail those in place. So you may notice the wardrobe change. This is kind of like Hollywood. we have to shoot things multiple days here. When I throw CR on the bus, CR was there playing basketball last night, and we got him to help us do this, and he started running the video camera for us. So we'll blame it on CR. But anyway, several of the videos, it was like it was turned. The gyro got off, and it was turned sideways. So anyway, we're going to redo those because I want to have a good video to show you what's going on here. So we want to fix that. So what we did here that didn't get on the video is this landing that'll be, I set it up just like the door at their house. So when you come up to their door, there was steps. So what I had to do here was, number one, measure. They have a handrail going here down this side. So we had to measure, this is 43 inches on this inside. And then there's the steps are under here. And what I had to do was notch these out for the steps. So this will set on the step, and this distance here, 2 3/8 inches, with a 5/4 board on top will bring us up to the threshold across here. So I notched this. It does not weaken that 2x8. Obviously, well, of course it weakens it, but again, it's sitting on brick steps. So we're going to have the steps here. I'll have a post going to the concrete here. I'll have the post here. This post will sit, since we're at 43 this way, to keep it consistent, I want to keep my 40 there. I'll run the boards all the way across to the outside edge here, but I'll set this off a 1/2 inch to keep this in line with the next handrail sitting outside the 40 inches all the way down. So that post will go to the floor. I'll put a post inside over here going to the floor, and then the wall will be right here. I also just go ahead and put on every step here, I put verticals to make sure, just my scraps of 2x12 or 2x8 or 2x4, whatever I have laying around scrap, I cut those to length and put them to the floor here. And I get up on top of these things. I weigh 250 pounds and jump up and down to make sure they're stable, and then they're not going to move. The next thing we're going to do today is cut the runners that come off this landing. I'm sorry, the other landing. It's at the turn that last little bit from the ground, that last 8 feet to get from the top of that last landing out to the ground. And what we'll do is we'll cut this on a diagonal. So I'll measure this off. It's going to be 8 feet on this landing. I'll measure off 8 feet and cut it at a diagonal, and I'll get 2 boards out of that one board, and it'll be the perfect angle to take me from top to bottom flush with the floor. So let's get the saw set up over here, get this marked, and we'll cut this. Last runner, I'm gonna come out to 96, 8 feet, because the total height to the top of this last platform is 8 inches when you got your 5/4 board on top of a 2x8. So we got this marked at 8 feet, and then I'm gonna change the camera here. I'm gonna take the camera and give my son the other end of this, chalk line. So he'll take the chalk line here and he'll hold it at one corner. Go to the corner there, bud. So he'll hold it at one corner and I'll hold it at a corner. And what this line does, we're gonna cut that line. Wait just a second, bud. We're gonna cut that line here. So I'm gonna make sure I pull it tight, and we'll make this diagonal, okay? I got it tight here, and you can thump it. All right, we'll set it to the side here and see what it did. So I've got a good chalk line here. This diagonal makes 2 boards. It makes the one that goes to the platform on this side, and one goes to the ground on the other side. So I need 3 of these boards, so I'll cut 1 more. If I'm gonna do a wheelchair ramp on say a 10-foot run or a 16-feet run or whatever, I'll use this whole board, and I'll cut this last board and this gives me a whole substantial board on that nice, gentle 1 to 12 slope. So I'm going to set my saw height here. I don't mind cutting into my sawhorses a little bit. That's what sawhorses are for. But I don't like cutting into them a bunch. So I set my saw height to just cut through. And then we'll cut this bad boy right here on this diagonal. All right, so I've got 2 cut, about to cut the 3rd one, and I always lay them on top of each other here because there's, as much as you like to think, you can put a diagonal. If it was a perfect rectangle, you put a diagonal, it'd be a perfect triangle. But with some of these boards with the warp and the bow on them, I've learned they're never going to be perfect, right? So what I do is then I lay them on top of each other, and I see which one is going to be the biggest and which one is going to be the smallest. And you can see as I'm moving this here, it's moving back and forth because there's a bow in this board when I cut it. So I can't do much with the small end, but I want to get this out of the middle here. If you come right over the camera right over on top, you can see a pencil width. And these are these big fat copper pencils on part of it. And then it goes narrow here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to lay this on top, and I'm going to take out some of this here in the middle because I don't want it to be too fat and my board have a big roll in it across the walkway. So I'm going to move this here, and I'm going to stop about here because I got to make these combine at some point because it's got a bow right there. About like so. So anyway, this last little bit won't really matter. I'll tap con that last step to the floor, and I always connect those last 3 steps from the underside so theirs don't play off very much. So I'm gonna set the biggest one down. I gotta cut it. Oh, I'll sit over here on the saw. Worse, that'll make more sense. And then I'm gonna trace this thin one that was my pattern on that one. I'm gonna trace it. If you see me dripping sweat, you see why I wear long sleeves even in the middle of summer. I sweat so much. I'm constantly wiping sweat. So there's that. And part of this board being off is my cutting with the saw. The Makita is not off, the guy driving the Makita is off. All right, I'm gonna cut these 2 and then we'll lay those 3 out. I'm gonna set my saw back to that depth. So then the board here that I cut this off of, it doesn't match these other 2. It'll be left over for next time. We'll set that aside. The last bit, it'll be the last few feet of the ramp, and we're laying it out here, and we want it to be 40 inches on the outside. It's got stability on the ground. It's going to be sitting on the ground the whole way, and all these decking boards will hold it. So what I do is I just put a couple 2x4s here and in the middle just to hold it in place until we get it there really. So if I measure this, it's 40 outside to outside, but that leaves me 17 3/4 between each of these boards. So I cut me 1, 2, 3, 4 2x4s that are 17 3/4 just to add me the stability to get it there in right place.
All right, well that's a wrap for part 1, but please go out and see part 2 where we actually install this at their house. Click like, subscribe, and share this with a friend. Thanks for watching.